Welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of Locally Sourced Spirituality. This one is called Spiritual Aid. I've invited you in the last episode on a spiritual journey, but just know that I don't claim any special knowledge or ability. I am a fellow traveler along the way. I'm a regular guy. I like to drink beer and I have kids and I mow my lawn and I like to hike. I've learned some things in my hiking experience. And one of those things that it's a good idea in the backcountry that when you encounter a fellow hiker, to be intentional about engaging them. One, it's just good to be social. It's good to have human contact. It's good to appreciate our fellow human beings. But secondly, they might have valuable information about the trail ahead, the place where they just came from and to where you are going. And they can be a source of information if you become lost or you need rescue. And you can be a source of information about them if they get lost or if they need rescue. I've been on this journey for a while, and you've been on your journey for a while, so we can be helpful to each other as we seek the divine together. As always, I covet your feedback. Leave comments, if you would, please, on the Locally Sourced Spirituality Facebook page. Just as important as the insight and practicality of what we can offer each other, there is a source of help on your journey, and it is a spiritual source. It is real. The divine is ever present, and it is there for your benefit. There's a source of spiritual aid that, if you're open to it, will guide you. So as we seek the divine, we paradoxically take the divine with us, and if we attune our attention properly, we can be guided by it. In the Bible, there's a section called Romans. It's a letter, and it's a teaching from a man named Paul. And he wrote it to the early Christians living in Rome around 2,000 years ago. And in the 8th chapter of that letter, Paul writes, "We know that the whole creation has been groaning in labor pains until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly while we wait for adoption, the redemption of our bodies. Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know how to pray as we ought. But that very Spirit intercedes with sighs too deep for words. And God, who searches the heart, knows what is in the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God." See, there is something deeper, more fundamental than our words can describe. There's a purpose and a direction for the universe that is larger than we can comprehend. The Spirit helps us in our weakness. The Spirit is the dynamic, active presence of the divine in the world, and it's driving the whole thing forward, and we often fail to be in alignment with it. And so we must learn to listen to this Holy Spirit, and when we're not clear about it, we can still trust that it's still propelling things in the right direction. But let's, for a minute, take a step back. How do we listen or discern what this underlying reality is doing? I guess first, it's done with humility. Because I get nervous when people do something and they say that, quote, God told them to do it. So we approach this gently, knowing that whatever we receive it as flawed individuals that can make mistakes. The first thing that we do after we understand that we are limited, earthly, finite creatures trying to touch and be connected to the infinite is to find that which in us is infinite and unchanging. The Spirit that lives in you is what you need to find and connect with first. Your spirit, the thing that is eternal in you, is your truest you. Your spirit is your deepest you. It's that part of you that is unchanging. Your spirit is the thing that has made you, that has been the same since your earliest memory and before. So think back. What's the earliest memory that you have of your life? And think about how you thought of yourself, about who you were. And fast forward to 10 years ago. Think about how you saw yourself. What was the same as that earliest memory? And what is the same that still remains today? That is the deepest you. No matter the circumstances, no matter the the changes of mind or position that you've had along the way, there is the deepest you that is consistent. That is your spirit. See, I keep several journals. One journal for major life events, one for my hiking trips, one journal is for things that interest and inspire me, and one for just daily thoughts and struggles. I recently collected all my journals into one place and read through the events of the past decade, and I found a recurrent theme. In the past few years, I've been dealing with and struggling with and getting exasperated with a person that I know who struggles with significant mental illness. I realized that this pattern of struggling and coming to the end of my strength repeatedly wasn't doing this person any good, and it certainly wasn't helping me to live a healthy life. So I decided to change my approach. I decided to give more attention to the parts of my life where I see growth and expansion and responsiveness and adaptation. And in so doing, I'm in a better position to be of help to those who need it. You see, I had to remember that part of me that has always been there, to be able to recognize the things that I really need to be healthy. The spirit, the dynamic presence of the divine is always there. And when I connect with the part of me that has always been, the path forward becomes clear. So I'm connecting myself, connecting the spirit within me to that which is eternal out there. My role emerges. So learning to listen to the spirit and receiving aid from the spirit is, in part, following the best possible timeline for your life. See, we get diverted by bad timelines. We get distracted from our purpose, and we become miserable. Yes, we have to meet our responsibilities, but we're allowed, and I think that even we should be expected to meet those responsibilities in continuity with the way our individual spirits are aligned. This doesn't mean that we'll be free from making mistakes. It doesn't mean that you may well have discerned a course of action that is consistent with what you believe to be good and right and holy, but things change and circumstances change and people change, but you made a commitment and you stick to it, and it sometimes becomes toxic. Or the reasons behind your decision turn out to be based on wrong information. When that happens, it's okay to change your timeline. It's okay to change the script when you discover that things are not as they originally appeared. 28 years ago, last January, I joined the Army Reserve. I was on Christmas break from my freshman year at college, and the news was broadcasting coverage of Operation Just Cause, and that was when the U.S. military invaded Panama and apprehended Manuel Noriega. As a young man, I appreciated the decisive action as an act of international justice. I wanted to be a part of that, and it was a good thing, so I signed my name to the line. I joined the Army. But to be honest, I had been thinking of joining for some time. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and I was always, as a kid, fearful that the Russians would at any point launch a nuclear attack on the United States and the world would be destroyed. So I already kind of wanted to join. But I wanted to join because of reasons other than nationalism or patriotism. I wanted to join because of that patch of land that I lived on just outside of Mount Pleasant, Michigan, that I called home. I wanted to join because of my family. I wanted to join because of my neighbors, who were all good people and didn't deserve to be obliterated because of the decisions of some Soviet leader on the other side of the world. As a young man, I bought into the notion of peace through strength. I didn't realize back then, though, that I was playing the same game as the generals and the leaders, but just on a much, much smaller scale. I was buying into the ugly side of patriotism that says us first, and to heck with everybody else. In a world like that, there will never be peace. I started to realize that there will never be true peace and security when we have increasing amounts of authoritarian rule, laws, firearms, and a militarized police force. I had a good motivation, but I was part of a bad timeline. Just because you put yourself on a particular timeline for the best reasons and intentions doesn't mean that you have to stay on that timeline. Now, I commend President Trump for securing the release of 3 Americans held captive in North Korea. I commend him for the upcoming peace talks with the President of North Korea. These are good things, but I'm nervous. I'm nervous because when North and South Korea started talking and showing signs of peace, do you know what happened? The stock market reacted. American defense companies stock took a hit. Their stock started to decline in value. See, war is big business for America, and money talks, especially in politics. So I wonder how committed the United States is to world peace when there is so much money to be had at promoting war. We're on a bad timeline as a nation. Memorial Day is coming up, and my hope is truly that there is not one more new honoree for Memorial Day. I wish for no more dead soldiers, no more dead Marines, no more dead sailors or airmen. But there likely will be some. And they will all be heroes, young men and women who love the piece of earth that they grew up on, who love their families and who love their neighbors and who want to do the right thing and live in a better world. Meanwhile, stockholders of defense companies are wringing their hands over peace talks on the Korean Peninsula. And as we listen for the guidance of the divine, of the Holy Spirit, observe the world and look for patterns of life. Where are good things happening? Where is there increased freedom? Where are people being fed? Where do people feel safe? Where are people accepted and loved? Those are God things. You see, I want you, my friends, my listeners, to live the best possible story that is available to you. I take an example from my youngest son. He's 8. And he smiles when he finds out that we're going to do something fun or interesting because that he's enjoying himself and because he sees it as an opportunity to journal. You see, every day at school, he is supposed to write several paragraphs about his previous day. And he usually goes above and beyond the minimum requirements of writing, so much so that his teacher had to put an upper limit on him. He journals interesting things, and he looks for interesting things to do so that he can journal about them. That's kind of what it's like to listen to the Holy Spirit. We respond to life and we enjoy life, and then we look for those life-giving opportunities to participate in later so that we can be more in alignment with the Holy Spirit. See, we should be curating our lives to be in alignment with what is good and right and holy. We should be future-focused. So ask yourself, where is this heading? This thing that's happening around you. And where am I heading with this? See, we can honor the past, but we can't relive it. We must take the baton. We must take responsibility for right now, even though we may have been handed a bad timeline. We are the ones carrying the torch right now. So how's it with you? What's your storyline? Are you stuck in a bad one? Consider that integrity may not be your commitment to a bad timeline. Integrity may be having the courage to do what is in alignment with what is good and right and holy. You have a spiritual aid in this life. You have a divine presence that will help you in this life. It speaks to the very deepest part of who you are. It's that part of you that is eternal, unafraid, and unchanging. Let that part of you be in charge of your journey. Talk to you next time.
Music is provided by Bleed the Water. Check them out on Facebook. Graphic design by Holly Pole Photography. Go to hollypolephotography.com. This has been a John Pole production.